You pull back just enough in the conversation that no one can accuse you of being cold, but also not far enough that they can reach you. You have calibrated this distance so precisely that most people cannot detect it. You have been doing it so long, you no longer notice you are doing it. That calibration is not emotional intelligence. It is scar tissue that learned to pass a strategy. There are laws attached to these patterns. First law, protective distance becomes structural. There is a behavior that appears in people who have been genuinely misread by someone they let in. Not disappointed, misread, trusted and then discovered to have been a resource to the other person rather than a person to them. After that, the behavior begins. They become meticulous about what they give and to whom. In a team meeting, they contribute visibly enough to demonstrate engagement, but never disclose anything that could be used to understand them. In a conversation that begins to deepen, they redirect, with warmth, with apparent openness, toward a topic that puts the spotlight on the other person. They are charming and present and leaving the entire time. You do this, not because you are closed. Because the last time you were genuinely open in a room with another person, the openness was the thing that got used. So now the room gets the performance of openness. And you stand just behind it watching. A person who has done this long enough begins to identify as perceptive rather than guarded. The distinction matters more than it appears to, because perceptive is a quality and guarded is a wound, and the mind will always prefer to understand itself through its quality. What protective distance actually creates maintained at this level of precision is not safety. It is an increasingly accurate model of other people, and an increasingly inaccurate model of what you need from them. Researchers studying social withdrawal after betrayal found that the surveillance sharpens while the appetite for genuine contact doesn't disappear. It goes underground, where it generates the specific exhaustion of wanting something you are simultaneously refusing to approach. In the next meeting you are in where someone is speaking, and you realize you are analyzing their motivations rather than hearing them. Notice what happens in the room while you are doing it. The person speaking will feel it, not as analysis, as absence. And they will respond to your absence as distance, and adjust their own behavior accordingly. And you will read that adjustment as confirmation that they were not safe to begin with. The behavior underneath that law is not defensive. It is generative, which is why it persists. Second law, legibility masquerades as warmth. There is a specific social performance that people running a betrayal wound develop with unusual sophistication. They become extremely good at making other people feel seen. They ask the right questions. They notice what others miss. They remember things. In a group setting, they are often the person who brings the room together, who tracks what each person needs and moves between them fluidly. People describe them as warm, emotionally intelligent, unusually present. This is, in part, true. It is also, in full, protective. If you are the person doing the seeing, you cannot be the person being seen. If you are always managing what the room needs, the room cannot turn its attention to what you need. The social grace is real, and it is also a perimeter. You have built a self-concept around being the person who understands others, which functions quietly as a permanent reason to remain the subject of no one's understanding. The expertise protects the interiority, and because the expertise is genuine, the protection is invisible even to you. Here is the inversion. Emotional warmth deployed as distance is not a compromise between connection and protection. It is a more sophisticated form of withdrawal. The people in your life who feel close to you are, in many cases, close to a carefully constructed approximation. And some part of you knows this, which generates the specific loneliness of being surrounded by people who care about you and feeling fundamentally alone. In the next conversation where someone asks how you are doing, not as pleasantry but as an actual question, notice what you do with the next 8 seconds. Notice whether you give them something true or whether you give them something that sounds true but routes their attention back to them before they can settle into what you just said. Third law, the watching is part of the wound. Consider for a moment someone you know who reads people too quickly, who has assessed a new colleague within the first 10 minutes of meeting them, who maintains a mental file of everyone's patterns, their inconsistencies, the gap between what they say and what they do. You recognize this person. you may have assessed them doing it. The mechanism you just used to recognize that person is the same mechanism. The catalog you keep of other people's behaviors. The instinct that turns a conversation into a diagnostic is not separate from your wound. It is your wound operating in its most functional form. Across ordinary social situations, this pattern produces a consistent outcome that is worth examining behaviorally. The person doing the most acute reading of the room is the person the room cannot read, not because they are private by nature, but because their attention externalized completely makes them structurally opaque. In a team environment where this was observed directly, the individual identified as most emotionally perceptive by their colleagues was also rated in separate private assessments as difficult to know. The room experienced their perception as care and simultaneously experienced their opacity as withholding. Both were correct. Both were the same behavior. The betrayal wound made you excellent at reading people. That excellence then became the methodology by which you avoid being read. You are not less seen because you are unlucky with people. You are less seen because you have made yourself structurally difficult to see. Using the same intelligence that was supposed to protect you, emotional detachment and emotional coldness are not on the same continuum. They are different architectures. Coldness removes the feeling. Detachment keeps the feeling and removes the compulsion to act from it immediately. What most people call detachment is coldness in a more socially acceptable container. The distinction is not philosophical. It is mechanical, and the mechanics determine what is possible. The person who has been played learns to feel less. That is coldness, and it costs them exactly what they were trying to protect: the capacity to be genuinely affected by another person, which is also the capacity to matter to one. The person who learns to detach learns something structurally different: to feel fully and respond deliberately. That is not distance. That is the closing of the gap between experience and reaction, without closing the person. The betrayal wound did not teach you to protect yourself. It taught you to optimize the performance of availability while systematically preventing contact. The difference between that and actual detachment is the difference between a wall that is painted to look like a door and a door that opens. What you protect when you withdraw is not yourself. It is the version of yourself that was hurt. That version is not the one currently in the room. The pattern underneath this one operates below the level of decision. In the half second before you speak, in the question you reroute. In the warmth you extend outward precisely when someone is beginning to extend it toward you. That layer is accessible. But what it contains is not what you expect to find there. Think about the last conversation where someone began to ask you something real. Not logistical, not professional. And trace what your behavior was in the 10 seconds after they asked. Not what you felt, what you did. Notice where you put the conversation. Notice where you put yourself. If this describes something you recognize in yourself, you don't need to do anything with that yet. Sit with the accuracy of it first. The pattern doesn't dissolve the moment it is named, but it does become visible in a way it wasn't before. And visible is where everything starts. If you want to go deeper into the mechanics of how the betrayal wound reshapes social behavior at the level most people never examine, that work continues on this channel. Subscribe so you don't miss the next layer. Drop a comment with one word. The word that describes what this video surfaced for you. Not an explanation. Just the word. I read them.